Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is a cloudy day here in suburban Chicago. The weather is quite pleasant, but it's overcast and not the most joyful of days, but still pretty delightful. So happy to be talking to you here on my podcast and looking forward to talking to you as I walk. I had a really fun game day yesterday with my friend Alan from Toggle Gaming. Hi, Alan. I don't know if you're a listener or not, but if you are, a greeting. Alan is a regular at Toggle Gaming on a semi-regular basis because he doesn't live in the Chicago area anymore, but he lives near where my in-laws live, and I was visiting them, and so I arranged to go hang out with him for a day. He and I were going to play games with a couple of his friends for a couple hours, and then we were going to do some other stuff, and those other plans got canceled. So it ended up being a mega game day, which was fantastic. We had a super fun time. I got introduced to the game Dune, a game of diplomacy and conquest. It's like the new sort of slimmed down version of the classic Dune game. I'll talk about that in a future podcast. We played Dice Miner. We played The City. We actually played 2 rounds of The City because it plays really fast, and also once you played it once, then you can kind of get the feel for it for the second game. And then we took a dinner break, and then after that we played Lost Ruins of Arnak, which of course I'd played before a couple times in person and several times online. And then we played at the table. Turned out to be a really good experience and well worth checking out if you get a chance. So yeah, that took us a couple hours, but it was really fun. 2 of the players had never played before. One of the players, Alan, had played like a third of a game or something, and then they had to stop. So I was the only one who played all the way through. Of course, I came in like 3rd place, so that was great. It was really fun. Sort of playing Lost Ruins of Arnak again really does tell me it's a like 3 or 4 times a year kind of game. Not something I'd want to play every week, but really fun and interesting, especially I think it would get kind of samey if you played it a ton, but I think playing it occasionally, super fun, really interesting game. But, so we got to talking because, like I said, Alan is a member of Toggle Gaming, and he's been working on getting a game group together in Lansing. And they've got a pretty good group of people meeting. If any listeners here are in the Lansing area and you want a game group to join, reach out to me. I'll help you find them. And they've been building a audience and looking for a way to build that bigger. And so we got to talking about what is it that makes for... There was a weird cowbell in a neighbor's yard. That's amusing. We got talking about what is it that makes for a good gaming group. And Alan laid out his theory about that. And I thought I would reflect on his comments because I don't know that I'd really articulated that before. That's what we're going to talk about today. So Alan laid out, he thought there were 3 things necessary to make a really good gaming group. The first one he said was recruitment management, that you needed to have an active process of trying to get people to the game group and make clear what it is the game group is about. So helping people get introduced to the group, helping people meet other gamers who are like-minded, and you can do that a number of ways. Our game group, we have our established space, so we have a kind of word of mouth going, but then we'll also use like online posting. We haven't done online advertising per se, but we do use online posting, and that's worked out pretty well so far. So that's recruitment management. And basically the goal of that is just to try to make sure that when people hear about your group, they can understand what it is and understand what's necessary to come, and that the sort of before they actually get to your group, they feel like they've got a good place, a good way to connect. Then once they actually get to your group, you need to make sure you have a process for welcoming them in. At our game group, generally, whomever's part of the leadership team will greet the person who is new. We'll make sure to greet everybody who comes in, if they're new, introduce ourselves, help get them into a game so they don't feel unwelcome. Because one of the things about game groups that can be really challenging is that, especially if you don't get there right at the beginning, people are in games and it's hard to feel like you're part of something. So doing our best to get people into games as soon as they get there or as quickly as we can after they get there works really well. Or if they've come with a group of people that they want to play games with, helping them find a game that they're interested in, maybe teaching it to them. These are things. So One place we can see this in operation is if you have been to any of the commercial game cafes. Snakes and Lattes is one here in Chicago that does this, who have a game teacher as part of what you encounter at the restaurant. Having that kind of concierge experience can really amplify the help or the experience of people coming to your game club. At the same time, you really want to make sure that you're taking care of the people who are taking care of your people. In other words, you want to think very carefully about what it means to have that welcoming job. And so I'll speak to my own experience of that. At our game club, I am one of the people who helps welcome, but we kind of alternate whose job it is to do that on any given night. We don't do that formally, we just kind of hand it off, but we have in the past done it formally, taken turns in the evening. And a key part of that is that we've seen in the past that people who are running the group feel obligated to be that welcoming person all the time. And what happens is they fall out of their love of games because they're spending all their time not playing the games. I know for myself, my game group is one of the only places I get to play my really heavy games. And so it's really important for me, for my love of the hobby, for my engagement with it, to get to play those games occasionally. So once or twice a month, I will arrange to play one of those heavier games. And that's what I will do when I come to game club. And the other kinds of things that we might do, the other welcoming work I do, the other play testing I do that on those other weeks. But I do make sure to try to get at least one play of a heavy game in at least once a month so that I can feel engaged with that experience. That's really important to me. So the recruitment management is a key part. It's one of those key legs on which the game club will stand, but it needs to be combined with the aspect of managing the recruitment managers. The second one is a good regular place to meet. This kind of seems obvious. If you're gonna have a game club, you gotta have a place to meet, but having it be regular, and I should have said place and time, having it be regular makes it reliable, and having it be reliable is an important part of this. So for instance, when you're having a game club, we meet every Tuesday from 6 to 11 at the same bar. That means that people, even if they're not really paying attention to what the group's going, they know I can go, and 50 weeks out of the year, they'll be there. Every now and again we have to cancel, but most of the time, no, we're right there. And that works really well. So being able to have the game group there consistently is a big part of what makes the experience good. So what is it makes a good space? You want to have a lot of light. You want to have a bunch of tables and lots of chairs, comfortable chairs. Ideally, I would say you want to have food and drink available. Now this is a little controversial because not having food and drink available means not ruining games. So there certainly are game groups that meet in like libraries or that sort of thing where food and drink wouldn't necessarily be available unless you bring your own. And even then, sometimes you wouldn't be allowed or encouraged to bring your own. Whereas we meet at a bar that is also a restaurant, so you can order food and beverage, and we encourage our members to do that. And so we really appreciate having that space and having that availability. But it also means that we can meet for 5 hours and not have to worry about leaving to find food. Like, if you're gonna meet for 5 hours, a lot of people will need to have food or drink during that time. And if you're at a place that doesn't offer it, then that's not cool. Now, there is the question of how does the place that offers it get compensated? We've got, a lot of bars, or restaurants, if you can find a night when they're not usually busy and use that as your night, you might be able to arrange to use the space without them making you pay, which is the crucial part, right? Because if you're going to pay, then you have to think about, well, how is your group paying for this? Now, there are some groups that have their own space. For example, there's the Cleveland Area Board Game Society, is a well-known, famous board game group. They provide the library for Origins Game Fair, for example. But their whole deal is that they have a building they rent. It is their society, and if you want to come to games there, you have to pay in order to play. Now, our philosophy has always been, you can game for free at our club, which means that we do have some people who come to our club, they get water, and they never buy anything or pay for anything. And that's okay. We understand everybody's got different levels of economic security, different levels of disposable income. Not everybody can afford to eat at a restaurant once a week. This does make it challenging, though, as we think about how does Nellie's benefit from our being there. And we do need some percentage of our members to buy things when we're there. Of course, the more people we bring in, the more support that would lead to. Yeah, having a good regular space to meet is important. And so That's been one of the big benefits of our group. Now, we had an inn when we started that one of the founders was an employee of the restaurant when we started. He is no longer involved, but we've got this good relationship with the restaurant, and so they've allowed us to continue meeting there. It's really important to think about what do you want out of your club and talk to people about that. But it is important that you're clear with the people who own the space about what you're looking for from the space and what they're looking for from you from the space. So that's a good regular space to meet. And then finally, I think a third thing that's really important, if you're gonna say there's three, is to have an available collection for use at the game club. A lot of game meetups just involve people showing up and bringing their own games, which means that if you're new and you want to play a game, you have to go around like looking in people's game bags or kind of go up and ask people to let you play. And that can be intimidating if you're new. By contrast, if the game club has a library, and we have a very nice library with lighted shelves that we roll out each week. That's the other thing though, the facility gives us a space to store those games, which is really, really a big deal for us. It makes it a whole lot easier for us to succeed at that. So if we have a space where we can keep the collection, then we can roll it out when it's time to play. And as a result, when you come to our game club, there's a big shelf of a couple hundred games that you can look at. And that serves two purposes. One, it makes it feel more like a public space. There's clearly games here that are there for use and not in someone's bag. It makes a psychological difference as the experience. Two, it allows for you to signal that you're new by standing in front of the collection and looking at it, right? If I'm in the middle of a game as one of our greeters, I might not always notice somebody walking in the door, but I almost always see somebody if they're standing looking at the collection. And then I can assess, is that someone I know? Do they seem to be with anybody? Then I'll go over and introduce myself if not. So having a regular collection, a collection available for them to use is a crucial part of making your board game club attractive for new members. I would say two other things that Alan didn't mention in our conversation, but that have been a key to our success. One is to have a leadership team. Having a few people who are participating in helping run the group is really important so that we can avoid having it all fall on one person's shoulders and that the community feels some ownership of it. It's worked really nicely for us to have a group of about 4 and continuing to do that will, I think, be really productive. So having a leadership team. And then you also want to spend some time as a group talking about what is your philosophy. You know, I said part of our philosophy was no one has to pay to play games. You should know what your philosophy is. As part of that, we've developed our ideas about what is and isn't appropriate behavior at our club. And we have that as a code of conduct. And so being able to say, here's what you are and are not allowed to do at our club, and posting that is, I think, a really useful way to make the space feel more welcoming. Those are some of my insights as a person running what I think arguably used to be the biggest regular board game club in the world. For COVID, our board game club on a slow night was 70 people, 60 or 70 people. And on a good night was 100, 125. As far as we've been able to find, that's probably the biggest club. There might be others, but we were comfortable saying probably the biggest club. As of now, we're working our way back up. On a slow night, we're only 35 or only 40 people. Looking forward to reclaiming our title, if that's such a thing. It isn't really, but you know, it's fun to communicate that. I guess a last call, if any of you listeners are in the Chicagoland area and you'd like to, you can make your way to Palatine on a Tuesday night. Come join us for the play. If any of you listeners are traveling to the Chicago area and can make room in your schedule for a Tuesday evening of games, I'd love it to see you come out and play. So do you run a board game meetup? What do you and your group do to facilitate that meetup? Head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and join the conversation. Let me know what your experience is in doing so. Well, thanks for joining me on my walk today. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.